36 meters beneath the world's most important oil highway, 7 men are sitting in total darkness. Not moving, not breathing loudly, not making a single sound. Their only job is to wait for the order that could set the planet on fire. The silence they're forcing themselves to keep is the only thing keeping them alive. And the sound of every ship propeller passing above their heads is both their target and their doom. Above them, something arrived that nobody saw coming. The largest naval armada to enter the Strait of Hormuz in the history of this conflict. More than 20 heavily armed warships, moving like a wall of steel. In the next 22 minutes, I'm going to take you 36 meters down into the silence those 7 men are forcing themselves to keep, and then up to the surface, where the United States Navy ran one of the most calculated, surgical demonstrations of naval power in modern history. And I'm going to show you why the deal that's supposed to end this standoff hasn't actually changed a single thing underwater. Stay with me, because the most dangerous part of this story is the silence. Imagine a vessel smaller than a tennis court, a cramped iron cigar, barely 29 meters from tip to tail, with just enough room for 7 crew members who haven't seen sunlight in days. This is Iran's Ghadir-class mini-submarine, a design born out of North Korea's coastal infiltration know-how, perfected for one specific, terrifying purpose: to turn the Strait of Hormuz into a killing zone. The strait is the throat through which a fifth of the entire world's oil supply flows every single day. 2 miles of navigable channel, shallow, steaming hot, acoustically messy. A place where the blazing surface water of the Persian Gulf crashes into the cooler, deeper Indian Ocean, creating thermal layers, sudden salinity changes, strong bottom currents that scramble sonar like a jammed radio. For a silent diesel-electric submarine sitting on the seabed with all systems shut down, this chaos is not an obstacle. It is a blanket of invisibility. The Iranian plan was chillingly simple. While diplomats were shaking hands through Pakistani intermediaries, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was quietly parking these Ghadir submarines directly in the middle of the shipping lane, each one carrying heavyweight homing torpedoes and submarine-launched cruise missiles. Settled onto the bottom at exactly 36 meters, the average depth of the strait. The exact operating depth these boats were designed for. No engines running, no pings, no electronic whispers. The crew sits in a claustrophobic drum, listening passively to the acoustic fingerprints of tankers and warships rumbling overhead, waiting for the moment the diplomatic track collapses. It was the perfect trap. A diplomatic olive branch above the water, and a loaded gun beneath it. You will not win this. That was the entire message, and the Navy spent more firepower delivering it than most countries field in their entire arsenal. Without warning, the largest naval armada to enter the Strait of Hormuz in the history of this conflict sliced through the water. Led by the USS George H.W. Bush Carrier Strike Group, more than 20 heavily armed warships moved in a dense blockade formation. This was not a patrol. This was a wall of steel, jet fuel, and explosive capability, arranged so perfectly that any vessel trying to sneak past would be detected, identified, and stopped before reaching an Iranian port. Arleigh Burke-class destroyers like the USS John Finn and USS Milius streamed their towed array sonars behind them, long electronic ears hunting unnatural sounds. MH-60 Seahawk helicopters took off from the flight decks and lowered dipping sonars deep into the water column at precise intervals, painting a living acoustic picture of the depths. The logistics vessel USNS Karl Brashear stood by, ensuring the fleet could stay on station week after week without a port call, resupplying fuel, weapons, and crew relief in the middle of the sea. And on the far flanks, nimble Independence-class littoral combat ships pushed into the shallows near the Iranian coast. Placing themselves as the first line of defense, the Navy was not just showing up, it was building an operating theater, where nothing could move without permission. The American carrier's air wing launched, Super Hornets roaring off the deck. And what they did next wasn't about killing, it was about something far more calculated. Iranian-linked tankers were targeted, but every single one of them was empty. The United States made a deliberate operational decision not to sink ships, not to spill millions of barrels of crude, not to kill innocent crew members. Instead, the pilots delivered precision-guided munitions onto the exact spots that would turn a massive tanker into a lifeless hunk of metal. One strike punched through the smokestack into the engine intake architecture. Propulsion dead. Another vessel had its rudder shredded by 20mm cannon rounds. Steering obliterated, a prisoner of the current. A third tanker suffered engine room destruction that snapped its mechanical heart in two. The ships were not sunk, they were frozen, incapable of completing their missions, drifting at the mercy of the waves while their crews stood by, powerless. Imagine the psychological impact on every other commercial captain in the region. 61 vessels assessed the reality, weighed the risk, and simply turned around. The message was louder than any explosion. We can touch your economic lifeline, delicately. Picture yourself inside that submarine. The crew of 7 hears the roar of jets, the muffled crump of precision hits above them, and yet the submarine must not move. It must not launch. It must not even breathe too hard, because the instant the Ghadir breaks silence, it dies. The submarine's entire tactical value is founded on being indistinguishable from a rock, a school of fish, ambient noise. The moment the captain orders a torpedo tube to open, a unique acoustic signature screams into the water. And in the deep listening arcs of the Gulf of Oman, Virginia-class nuclear attack submarines are waiting for that sound. Stop for a second. I want you to actually sit in that silence with me. Because that silence, the one I just made you sit in for 2 seconds, is what those 7 men live in, constantly. What I'm about to show you is the architecture built specifically to make sure that silence never breaks in their favor. It's one of the most sophisticated detection systems ever assembled, and once you understand how it works, you'll understand exactly why those 7 men cannot move. At all. Ever. If you've stayed this long, you're about to understand naval warfare better than 95% of the people who'll ever watch a video about it. The anti-submarine warfare net the U.S. Navy assembled is layered, intelligent, almost supernatural. P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft crisscross the sky, dropping active and passive sonobuoys at calculated intervals. These expendable sensors form an invisible electronic net on the seabed, feeding data back to processors on the fleet. They can tell the difference between a Ghadir's battery restart and a school of mackerel swimming nearby. The destroyer's towed arrays ride far behind the ships, far enough to escape the propeller noise that masks mechanical whispers. Whenever any buoy or array flags an anomaly, an MH-60 Seahawk races to the spot. It dips its sonar deep into the thermal layers and interrogates the contact with focused acoustic energy. Meanwhile, unmanned surface vehicles equipped with hydrophones glide across the strait, mapping the acoustic environment in real time, building a baseline so detailed that any tiny departure, the hum of an electrical pump, stands out like a scream. It is an architecture that can produce a firing solution in seconds, from the moment a target reveals itself. Mark 54 lightweight torpedoes and Mark 48 heavyweight torpedoes, always seconds from launch. The Iranian submarine commanders know this. They can hear their own ships dying above them. But they also know that breaking silence means ending not only their mission, their lives, instantly. Hundreds of fiberglass fast attack boats stashed in coastal caves. Drones launched cheaply in salvos. Coastal missile batteries dug into cliffs. Underground complexes beneath Kish Island. Iran spent years building this, layer by layer. For every swarm of fast attack boats, the Phalanx CIWS systems on the destroyers spin up their rotary cannons. Capable of firing thousands of rounds per minute, they create a wall of tungsten that shreds any small surface target. For the drone threat, EA-18G Growler electronic attack aircraft fill the sky with full-spectrum jamming signals. They blind drone navigation by spoofing GPS, sever control links, turn the drone's own sensors into static. For the coastal missile batteries, F-35B Lightning II fighters use their stealth to penetrate radar coverage undetected. They strike the launchers and tracking radars before a single missile can be fired at the fleet. Even the hardest underground bunkers are not safe. The B-2 Spirit stealth bombers loiter with massive ordnance penetrators, designed to burrow through rock and concrete and destroy whatever the IRGC thought was safely protected. And if all this were not enough, Special operations forces aboard the MV Ocean Trader stand ready to infiltrate ports, sabotage critical nodes, board vessels with a level of precision that no missile can match. Tehran was hemorrhaging $500 million a day. A vicious factional war was raging inside the regime. A leaked assessment gave them 6 to 8 weeks of blockade tolerance. So they signed. But signing a deal and clearing a seabed are two very different things. The deal was announced. Uranium scheduled to leave. The strait supposed to reopen under monitoring. But here's where the truly dangerous part begins. Because the operational environment has not changed at all, during the 60-day implementation window, the Ghadir submarines remain on the seabed, in 36 meters of water. The mines that fast attack boats can secretly lay at night remain a very real possibility. The mobile coastal missile batteries can still be repositioned. The hardline faction that controls these submarine crews is not suddenly less radical because an agreement was signed. It is more pressured, more cornered, watching its entire institutional vision collapse in real time. A rogue attack during this fragile transition would be devastatingly easy to launch. A tanker hits a mine. A Ghadir fires a torpedo at a protected vessel. A swarm harasses shipping. Any of these would shatter the deal's credibility and hand the hardliners exactly the chaos they need. The U.S. Navy understands this perfectly. The anti-submarine warfare architecture is not being stood down yet. The P-8s are still dropping sonobuoys. The towed arrays are still streaming. A Ghadir, still sitting on the bottom with a live torpedo, does not care about a memorandum. The silence in the strait right now is the most dangerous sound imaginable, to those who know what it means. A crew of 7 is still inside that iron cylinder, listening to everything that passes overhead. Somewhere in the deep, a Mark 48 torpedo is already warmed up, ready. Here's what I want to know from you. Do you think those submarines will ever dare to move? Or does the fuse just keep burning quietly until the window closes one way or another? Drop your read in the comments. I respond to as many as I can.